I had another breakdown. I keep having breakdowns. It's like how I first started off, but I couldn't do it. I have to go to sleep again. That means I have to wake up. So I'm just listening to music and crying to myself. So many people are in trouble. I've been watching a lot of videos of like the queens just getting their head cut off, and I'm like, you know what? That sounds so good right now. Yes, please. It's better than living without my kid. I can't live without my kid. If I had my kids, I wouldn't be crying. I wouldn't be me smoking weed. There's no fucking no time. There's no time. You gotta be spending your whole time with them. There's so many things to do with them. They're so busy. They keep you on your toes. I don't like technology, and this government is recording us for court to make a profit. They keep telling me they have the Nevada case on me. They have the Nevada case. They have the judge on there. They keep giving me the image of the judge in Nevada, and I'm so fucking sick of this. I really wish my throat, if someone would just come and just do an OG on me at this time. I'm just fucking done with this shit. So far, I haven't. The homeless. I think there's less than a handful of homeless that I met that were really fucking like mean to me. But other than that, they've all been. I'm just like, I'm in a position where I can help them, but I'm babies and I can't get my kids back because there's people that I can't. I don't believe in God and Jesus, and they're trying to make me believe in God and Jesus. Just freaked me out when she got home. And she gave me the letter about court, and that's why I feel like crying right now. I'm just like, I had a breakthrough now. Like, fuck, I was so good today. Trying to exercise, trying to keep moving, trying to walk, and trying to get back into running. I had to pass 25 minutes running, and I can't even pass like 10 minutes of running straight without crying. But I can walk and cry. I just can't run and cry. I'm crying myself to sleep and bitching myself, like bitching about whatever I did, the bare minimum, but trying to educate myself and doing the meditation, it's really tiring. And listening to these tarot readers and these passed over people, what I'm gonna have to face. Me listening to these tarot readers, it's easier. My son's it's easier to have. What was I saying? Oh yeah. So when I'm doing these readings, it's like it's more than confirmation for me, knowing that there's somebody that's not awake yet, someone that understands, but they're not on my level. There's no court, there's no justice system, there's no, and I ain't gonna wait no 140 fucking years. You know how many people are telling me they signed a contract, and I'm like, what contract are you fucking talking about? I didn't know there's such a thing. I'm not talking about the United States of America contract shit. Whatever they're doing, whatever sneaky shit they're doing. These universities, oh my god. I'm a medium psychic. I'm also trying to give people images too of SOS and helping me out. Right now, I am, okay, Elliot. Let's bring up Elliot, because I don't think anyone is bringing him up, Elliot. He just came up recently. And then what happens is that usually I'll get a sense of him gonna be up. Like I'll get like he'll pop up in my head, and then all of a sudden on YouTube it'll pop up. So this is what's happening right now. So what happened is that Elliot is popping up in my head. Of course, you guys aren't gonna hear it. Maybe. No, I'm gonna just turn it up because I don't. Oh, maybe not. Okay, here. I lost my other thing. Let's do that.
This video is not to endorse or promote his actions in any way. Rather, I think it's important to look into these cases and find out what exactly went wrong. When it comes to crimes like these, the news media tends to blame one or two contributing factors when the reality is much more complex and nuanced. To write this video, I dug through hundreds and hundreds of pages of manifestos, police reports, diaries, and interviews. Just to make it clear from the beginning, some of the pictures that I came across were pretty low resolution and had some text imposed under them, but I've decided to include them regardless because, well, they're interesting. I've also decided to blur the faces of some of the people in this video. If their pictures were already widely available online, if they're somewhat of a public figure, or if they've willingly spoke out about this case, I've gone ahead and left them in. But if they've tried to distance themselves from the case, or if their pictures seem to have been obtained horribly grave means I've blurred them out. With that said, let's get started.
Like, he didn't do this all on himself.
Li Jin was a Malaysian woman of Chinese descent born in 1961 in Penang, Malaysia. She moved out to England while she was still young and went on to work as a nurse. Eventually, she started working on film sets. This is where she would meet her future husband. Peter Roger was born in 1965 in the United Kingdom. Peter was born into the prestigious Roger family, a family that was once very wealthy before they eventually lost a lot of their money during the Great Depression. Peter's father, George, was a very talented
responsibility.
widely known for the
They're just
photographs
brushing
he
it
took
off like
during
narcissists,
World
like
War II.
gaslighting. That's exactly
Peter
what they're
had began
doing.
working as a filmmaker and a photographer when he met Li Jin. When he was 26
Like,
years
that
old and
feels
she
so
was 30, he
fake.
ended up getting her pregnant, reportedly on accident. While they were dating, Li Jin had gotten sick and believed that some medication she was taking negated the effects of her birth control. Either way, the couple decided to marry. On July 24th, 1991, their son, Elliot Oliver Robertson Roger, was finally born. When Elliot came into this world, Peter and Jin were living in a pretty nice house up in London. But they decided to go for the quiet life and move out to the country. They moved into a large home out in Sussex County, all ready to live a life of peace. Elliot would go on to spend the first 5 years of his life in this carefree environment. Elliot was very happy at this time, watching his father transition into directing films while his mother became a stay-at-home mom. Jin's mom, who everyone called Ama, moved in with the family to help out. Elliot became very fond of Ama and spent much of his time with her. Elliot was placed into an all-boys private school called Dorset House near his home. Elliot didn't really like this school and often cried, feeling the teachers were too strict. He fondly remembered one incident in which all of the students were forced to sit cross-legged, but he refused so adamantly that the teachers buckled and let him sit differently. Elliot's family would often have big parties for the holidays, a trend that would continue for the rest of his life. Elliot's grandfather, George, was very ill at the time, not going out much, but he grew very close to his grandmother, who he called Grandma Jinx. Elliot had blissful memories of learning to fly kites with his father, playing games with his friends, and traveling Europe with his family. However, soon Elliot would go on to experience tragedy for the first time in his short life. The family took a trip out to Greece. While they were there, Grandpa George passed away back home. It was at this point that Elliot first saw his father cry, and in turn first experienced pain, and more than that, a feeling of loneliness. Unable to enjoy the vacation, the family
What
flew
I
home.
got from his videos
Peter
was
Roger
a
wanted a
boy
new start
crying
and new
for help, a boy
opportunities.
that didn't,
Shortly
that
after
was
Elliot turned
misunderstood,
5
a boy that
years
was getting
old, Peter
bullied, a
decided to
boy
move the
that
family
didn't
out to the United
get
States. He
what he
felt
was
that for
asking
a
for.
filmmaker, Los Angeles would be the place to
But
be.
then over time,
After
when
taking
you
the
get an
family out to
adult, that's gonna
California for a
look
short
kind of
trip
like,
to scope it out, they all
it's gonna look
decided that they would
different.
love to live
It's
there.
gonna look
While
like
preparing to go, Jen got pregnant once
exactly
again,
what
this
it's looking
time with
for.
a little
It's
girl,
exactly what
a
it
girl
is.
that would go on to be Elliot's younger sister, Georgia. The family packed up their Sussex home and got ready to head out to America. Elliot went to his school for the last
I
time,
really
but he
fully
wasn't sad.
believe
He
that the
was ready to
girl,
start his new
he's just
life. And start a new life he did, as the
substituting,
family
and
flew
that's
out to
what he
Los
wanted.
Angeles,
No, that's
leaving
not what he
England
wanted.
behind.
What he
Elliot was too
really
excited
wanted was
to
to be
even sleep
heard.
on the plane. When the plane came to land, he was amazed at the scenery
He
and
thought that
disbelieved
that
at
was
what a beautiful
like,
place he
he
would move
thought,
into.
I don't
Elliot
know.
hit his limit as a little kid
I'm
and
just,
crashed in the car on the way to their new home out in Woodland Hills. Once they got to the home, the atmosphere was immediately sullied when Elliot found out that the room he liked best in the house would be going to his younger sister. Before she was even born, Elliot was already jealous of and angry at his little sister. Elliot excitedly told his parents that he wanted to be an American kid now. He melted into the environment very quickly, consuming all manner of American media and quickly adapting to speaking in an American accent. He was ready for his new life and new identity. Elliot started attending kindergarten at a school called Pinecrest, but things didn't go so well. His teacher was upset at how far behind the other kids Elliot would be after all the time he had missed while moving. The teacher kept him inside during recess to catch up on missed work, which his parents did not like. Eventually, they took him out of school and placed him into a school called simply Farm School. At his new school, Elliot made a new friend, Joey, but quickly grew to hate him. He later described him as a rotten little prick who he would always get into fights with, saying that he was his greatest enemy. He made good relationships as well, though, meeting his first true friend in America, a little girl named Maddie Humphreys. His very first friend in America was none other than a little girl. After playing with Maddie numerous times, her and Elliot's parents became friends as well. Maddie's parents were in the entertainment industry too, giving them a lot in common.
I don't know.
The families had all sorts of parties and get-togethers where
I
Elliot got
think
to play
because
with his
he
new
looked
friend
like
even
it,
more.
because he
They got
tried
close enough
so
to even take
hard, he
baths
has
together,
that part
which
in
Elliot would
him.
later describe as
Because
the
he looked
only
like a
time in his
model.
life that he would see
But
a
that's
girl
because
his
he
age
did it,
naked.
and he didn't have that
Elliot would go on to
confidence, because no
graduate
one
kindergarten as a
showed him, no
happy,
one gave
normal
him
child,
that confidence.
experiencing all the essential things that the average kid
Yeah,
would.
yeah.
This
He
happy
told me
life,
that
however,
earlier
would
in
not
a reader.
last. Once Elliot was 6 years old, he
Aww.
spent a lot of his spare time in the afternoons going to parks with his family,
Yeah.
most notably the Serenia Park, which was his favorite. But it was at these parks that Elliot began to experience a new emotion, that of envy. He was particularly jealous of the other boys who were able to use the swings by themselves, especially the ones who were younger than him. For the first time, Elliot felt physically inadequate, a feeling that would never subside. When Elliot went to Universal Studios with his family, he was very excited to ride the Jurassic Park ride. But when he finally got to the front of the line, an employee informed him that he was too short to ride. He was humiliated as the other boys his age hopped on and he had to stay behind. Elliot flew into hysterics, leading his mother to carry him away while comforting him. But Elliot continued to hang out with Maddie, even going to her house and playing with her and her friends, a group of all girls. At this stage in his life, he had no problem interacting with girls, even playing with them more often
because
than
I
boys.
can relate to it, or I feel like
Elliot
I
and his
understand
family
it.
would move out to
It just
Topanga.
feels like I'm in
He was
it.
very sad to leave the area he had gotten used to, but he loved his
And
new
then if I'm
house on Valley
completely
View
wrong,
Drive. It
wrong,
was a two-story house complete with a
it
big
still
pool
feels
and a
fake to
deck
me.
with a
It just
great view
feels
of the
like I'm in
mountains.
it.
He entered into Topanga Elementary School, experiencing
So
some
that
of the
means
best
like
years
there's
of his
something else
childhood.
that was
He met
involved
who
in
would
that
go on to
area
be
that
two of his best
has
friends for
nothing
the
to do
rest of
with
his
you,
life.
but it just
Two
has something
boys
to
named
do with the
Philip and
earth. So there's
James.
something
They would
probably
get
like
together to play
underneath the
sports,
ground,
war games, and simply hang out. With James living
like an
nearby,
ancestor
Elliot
in
was
the
able to
ground,
go to
and they're
his
just
house
like,
anytime he
you
wanted.
remember that time
Peter's
that this
career
couple
as a
had a
director
fight?
was taking off as
Well,
well.
I'm
He was
underneath
leaving home
there.
fairly often to go
It'd be
work
like
on
that.
commercials for all sorts of different companies. As he was gone so often, he hired a nanny to help Chin out. Elliot, although he missed his father, respected him as a rich and powerful
You guys are
man.
looking dead.
Once Christmas came along, Elliot got a gift that would change his life, a Nintendo 64. At this point, he'd barely
You
even
just told
seen
me
a
I go,
video game in his life.
because I was gonna
His
say,
father sat
you
down and
guys, the
played
dead
both
people have so
Turok
much
and
fun,
Star
you know?
Wars Shadows of the Empire with him,
But then they're like,
sparking a
no,
lifelong
everywhere has
fascination for
fun.
video
You know, you
games
just
and
have
giving him
to
another opportunity to bond with
be
his
in the
father.
moment. Like, yeah, you're right. I just have to. Yeah, this place has fun too. It does.
Unfortunately, Elliot's home life was going downhill by no fault of his own. His father and mother were getting into more and more arguments.
Thank you.
Elliot had heard of divorce before, knowing the parents actually could split up, and that was something that terrified him. He sat on the deck and looked out into the distance with his mom, opening up to her and asking her if they would ever divorce. She told him not to worry, that it would never happen. Elliot sighed a sigh of relief. His 7th birthday came along, a memory that he would cherish forever. It was the last time he would ever remember his parents being happy together, as very shortly after his birthday, he would hear some of the worst news of his life. His mother told him that, despite what she had previously said, she and his father were indeed getting a divorce. Elliot immediately felt a
If
burning
that's
sense of
truly
betrayal.
this case, if
It was
that's
decided
what
that
it
Elliot
is,
in
like,
Georgia would mainly live with Jen and see
he
Peter on the
wanted to kill
weekends.
his
Peter was to
father.
pay child support as well. From then on, Elliot grew up in 2 different houses with 2 different families. It was time to start his life over once again.
So
After the
imagine
split,
if you're
Elliot became much more
dead,
close
and
with his
then
mother,
you
Jen.
find out that
He
your
felt that she
father,
was very loving and kind, and turned the home
father's acting
environment
like
into a
that,
place where
like
he
a
could actually
dick
be
like
happy.
that. Oh,
Peter,
shit, what would you
however,
do?
started going through financial trouble, forcing him to downsize into a much smaller home.
I would
Only a
find
few months
somebody that's
later, Elliot
willing
would go on to
to
meet one of the most central figures in
sit
his
with my
life.
spirit.
When going to visit his father, he came home to see a tall
I don't
woman with
know.
long black hair standing in the kitchen. This woman was an actress from Morocco named Sumaya. Elliot was told that she would be his new stepmother and that she would be
There's
living
no
with
reason
them
to
from
kill
then on
people
out.
either,
Elliot wrote,
you know?
My father having a girlfriend so shortly after divorcing my mother didn't even occur to me. I couldn't understand it. Soon enough, though, I realized that Sumaya was, in fact, his girlfriend, and they were together just like how my father and mother were together. Father finding a new girlfriend in such a short amount of time baffled me. I was completely taken aback.
Despite his shock,
See
Elliot
what I
developed
mean?
even more respect for
relationship
his
that
father,
affects the
seeing him
kids,
as a
and you
man
guys
that
don't
women
think that it
desire,
affects the
a man
kids.
that
It
could bounce
so affects
back
the
and find a
kids.
new, beautiful woman almost instantly. Around this time, Elliot's parents first began to notice that his behavior was somewhat strange. He had difficulty making eye contact while
So to
speaking
me,
and
it's
rarely
like,
spoke
okay,
up for himself unless he was asked a
the
question
MK Ultra
directly.
stuff.
When he spoke, it was usually in no
I
more
shouldn't.
than a
I know
whisper.
what you mean. So the
Something
MK
they
Ultra
found
stuff.
even
This
more
is
concerning was
what I
Elliot's
was talking
preference to
about.
write
That
notes to them
I
on
thought like
pieces
if
of
when
paper
it's
rather than
fake, when it
speak to
feels
them.
fake, that's what I'm
He
like.
tended to
Okay,
gaze
is
off
this one
into
of
the
those MK
distance,
Ultra
sitting
stuff?
in the
Like
same spot
since
every
I'm
single
thinking it
day.
ahead and then all of a
He would
sudden I
make
see it.
noises,
Is
tap
that
his
one of
feet,
it?
and
Is
repeat
that
the
something
same
like
words
that?
over and over, often saying great, great, great in particular. For these issues, Elliot was taken to various therapists. He wasn't diagnosed at this time, but professionals believed that he was showing signs of either
They're
high-functioning
connecting me
autism or
with this one
Asperger's
to
syndrome. From this point onward, Elliot would
the
experience
salon.
very inconsistent
There's
mental health
there's
care for the
one.
rest of his life.
Somebody
Elliot
shot a bunch
gradually
of
started
people in a
getting used to
salon.
Sumaya
I
being
think
his
it
new
was
stepmother. He learned that she was from the
couple
Akaboun family,
fighting.
a prestigious family from Morocco. In the
Laguna.
beginning, they got along very well and had a lot of fun
So
together.
beach.
This was until she started to discipline
So
him.
beach.
He
I
felt
believe.
that, as she wasn't his real parent, she had no right to do so. Tension came to develop between them, a tension that would never
I
subside.
am getting a pull.
Elliot's mother, Chin, became good friends with George Lucas. As a result, Elliot was invited to attend the premiere of Star Wars Episode 1. He loved the original movies and was overjoyed to be able to attend. He even got to meet some of the actors, including Jake Lloyd, the young actor who played Anakin Skywalker, a character that he greatly admired. Elliot started to see Maddie less and less, only on the occasion that their families would have a
then that
get-together.
means that I
Maddie's
feel I
parents
really
got
haven't
divorced as
believed
well,
that
with her father
Hollywood
moving
did
back
this
to
shit.
England.
Or Hollywood,
Regardless,
or
Elliot still had
for
a lot
me,
of fun playing video
I
games, meeting
thought
friends,
maybe
going
I
to school, seeing
felt
movies,
like
and just being a regular kid. During the holiday season, when Elliot was in 3rd grade, he heard from his
first I
father that they were
thought the
going to
news
visit
was putting
Sumaya's
it out
home
so the
country of
news can put out
Morocco.
copycats.
They all
So
flew
the
out and met
news
her
can
family.
create
Elliot
copycats.
felt that, of all
Like
the
what they
places
do
he had
with
been, Morocco was fairly strange. It felt more
driving.
foreign to him than even
When they do
Malaysia.
police
He
chases.
described the place as backwards, although admitting that he found the culture interesting and the people friendly. Sumaya's mother, Khadija, had a smaller, more modest home, while her father, Abdesalim, had a huge house that Elliot felt was like a castle. Apparently, that home was even used in a James Bond film. Elliot found this very cool. All in all, it was a nice trip, and Elliot came back to America completely content, blissfully unaware that his later trips to the country would not be near as
Whatever they were
pleasant.
doing in the middle of the day, you know,
By the
those
time summer
lines,
came around,
they're doing
Peter's
it at
commercial
night
directing
time.
career had recovered.
Those fake
Actually, it had
clocks.
blown up even more than ever before. He was at the peak of his success. As a result, he moved the family into a much bigger, nicer home. They settled down in a wealthy area of West Hills. In the end, though, Elliot still preferred his mother's house. Despite the modest size of the home, he felt the environment to be much more pleasant. Still, though, he had his 9th birthday party at his father's house. Sumaya planned and hosted the party herself, turning the occasion into a huge celebration, even inviting all of his friends and hiring a magician for the occasion. When summer ended, Elliot entered the 4th grade. Even though he was still very young, his feelings of inadequacy around girls were already starting to develop. He discovered that he was indeed fairly short for his age, being the shortest kid in his class, even shorter than all the girls. He tried to play sports with the other boys, but quickly noticed that they were all much more talented than him. He felt short, weak, and pathetic. It was around this time that Maddie started to enjoy playing with his younger sister, Georgia, more than him.
Oh, cute. They gave
This
me a
made him so
star.
extremely jealous and lonely that he cried on each and every occasion. Elliot's fights with Sumaya only grew in intensity, with Elliot still believing that she had no right to impose any sort of rules. The fights were often very trivial, with Elliot exploding over having to drink milk or eat soup. On one occasion, he invited Philip over to his dad's house. Elliot ended up yelling at Georgia, after which Sumaya scolded him and sent him to his room. He was so embarrassed in front of Philip that he never invited a friend to his dad's house ever again. Sumaya later spoke about these early conflicts in an email she sent to Elliot, writing, "Every time that I tried to explain that you needed to listen or do something, you would tell me that your mother said you didn't have to do anything I say. Every time that I would try to make you do something and in exchange you would get a reward, you said that your mother said it was corruption, therefore you wouldn't do it. Every time I asked you for your help around the house or with anything else, you refused and said that it was my job and not yours." Chin began having somewhat of a cold war with Sumaya, telling Elliot behind the scenes that he didn't need to do anything she said, that she wasn't his real mother, and to rebel if she tried to discipline him. Elliot began to love staying at his mom's house and dreaded having to go back to his dad's house. At his mom's place, he could do virtually anything he wanted while being pampered and catered to. His mom often invited his friends over, knowing that he was too timid to do it himself.
Damn it,
She
you
let him
guys.
have all the fun he wanted.
If you guys want to do that,
Elliot's feelings of inferiority intensified as his elementary school years came to an end. He started to realize that cliques were
Please
developing in school. Now there were cool kids and uncool kids. Elliot admired the cool kids, but soon came to a shocking realization. He wasn't one of them.
I can
His
play that
self-esteem
song.
plummeted
Okay,
more than
okay.
ever.
After this,
Around
let me
this
tell
time,
them
he
this
started to
story real
become
quick, and
conscious
then I
of
play
something
that
he
song
had
for
never
you.
really noticed
I
before.
promise.
Race.
I promise.
Although Elliot was
I
half
promise.
white and half Asian, it wasn't really something that he understood. Now, though, he was starting to feel that, just maybe, this was what was making him different from the other kids.
Yeah.
Elliot became more and more fascinated with white girls, exclusively blonde white girls. This fascination led to an inferiority complex, with Elliot desiring to make himself blonde as well. He felt that blonde people were truly beautiful, begging his parents to let him dye his hair. It was in fashion at the time, and they saw no problem in letting him do it.
Okay. I'm gonna show you this. Okay. Oh. First, they want me to. That song. Okay, that song. But I can't play it right now. I mean, I can't play it on this thing right now. I have to, because they're going to, it's going to block off my YouTube thing.
Did you know the true story behind the movie Changeling in the town of Miraloma, California shares chilling history? Truth really is stranger than fiction. Now, let me tell you a story about innocent boys, a trickster, and a twisted chicken farmer and his mother. I'm Amy, and this is True Crime Recaps, bringing you all the crime in half the time. Our story starts around 5 p.m. on Saturday, March 10th, 1928, in a working-class neighborhood in Los Angeles called Lincoln Heights. Christine Collins was starting to panic. She'd given her 9-year-old son, Walter, money to go to the movies, but it was dinner time, and he still wasn't home. She was a single mother while her husband was serving time for robbery at Folsom Prison. She called the police right away, but they made light of the situation and told her that the boy had probably just run off. But Christine knew better. There was no reason for Walter to run away. She insisted that he had been kidnapped. A search party was formed, but there was no sign of him. However, everyone had their theories. Walter's father figured a former inmate took him as revenge. He worked in the prison kitchen, and part of his job was snitching on other prisoners, but that lead didn't go anywhere. Another woman reported seeing a boy about Walter's age in a car with two people. She remembered the boy was upset and crying, but she couldn't give a very good description of the people he was with or the car that they were driving. Other witnesses came forward to say that in the days leading up to his disappearance, an Italian-looking man and woman had been asking questions about where Walter lived, but they couldn't give any specifics either about these mysterious strangers. A month later, the police were out of clues, and for the most part, they kind of washed their hands of the whole thing. They figured, they were right all along, the boy was a runaway. The thing was, Walter wasn't the only little boy to disappear in the area around that time. A month earlier, on February 2nd, a burlap bag was found in a ditch. Inside was the headless body of a boy named Alvin Gathia. He'd been shot in the heart with a .22 caliber rifle. 2 months after Walter went missing, 30 miles away, Nilsen and Louis Winslow, 10 and 12 years old, they never made it home after a model yacht club meeting. A short time later, their parents got a strange letter telling them not to worry. The boys had gone to Mexico and they weren't coming back until they were famous. But the police weren't connecting any dots between those boys and Walter. But his mother refused to give up hope.
How many cases are like that right now?
5 months went by when out of the blue, a miracle happened. Walter had been found alive and well in DeKalb, Illinois, almost 2,000 miles away. Thanking God for answering her prayers, she bought the boy a train ticket to Los Angeles and waited eagerly for her son to return. Now, meanwhile, the LAPD were congratulating themselves on their successful investigation and making sure the media knew the long-lost Walter Collins was coming home to his mother thanks to their efforts. And sure enough, the newspapers and her friends and neighbors turned up at the train station to see the reunion. But when the boy got off the train, Christine got an awful shock. He was not her son. She tried to tell police captain J.J. Jones what she suspected. Now, she knew her own son, and whoever this boy was, he wasn't her child. But the captain refused to listen. He wasn't about to go to the press and admit they had the wrong kid, so he decided to ignore her. He tried to convince her the boy was her son, saying it had been 5 months. The boy had undergone who knows what trauma, so maybe he just seemed different. He told her to take Walter home and try the boy out for a while. Maybe she would change her mind. True statement. Can you believe it?
How many times?
But what else could she do? All eyes were on her, so she took the boy home. She had some questions. If this person was her son, how did he end up in Illinois? What had happened to him? But Walter was strangely quiet on the subject. And when he did talk to the police, they couldn't get a straight answer out of him. He just didn't want to talk about it. 3 weeks went by, and Christine was 100% sure she was taking care of a stranger's son, while the real Walter was still out there somewhere. Except now, no one was looking for him. She was desperate to make the police believe they had the wrong boy. She brought in dental records as proof that the boys were different. But not only did Captain Jones refuse to concede he had made a mistake, he actually had her committed. Her only crime was the possible humiliation of the LAPD, but it was easy to lock her up thanks to something called the Code 12 Internment Clause, which allowed the police to have you committed or jailed if you were being difficult. She was subjected to electroshock, sedatives, and other treatments to cure her of her hysteria, all in the name of forcing her to agree that this strange kid was actually her son. But no matter what they did to her, she refused to say it. Now, who knows how long she might have been kept there if it weren't for the fact that on the 10th day, Walter finally came clean and admitted, all right, he wasn't the real boy. He wasn't even the same age. At first, he said his real name was Billy Fields, but it didn't take long to discover that that was also a lie. His real name was Arthur Hutchins Jr. He was 12 years old. Well, here's how Arthur became Walter. His biological mother died when he was 9, and he hated his stepmother and wanted to get away from her. Around the same time Walter disappeared in California, Arthur ran away in Iowa. When he got picked picked up by the police in Illinois, they noticed how much he resembled the missing Walter Collins. They started asking him questions. That's when Arthur realized, he's onto something here. If he agreed that he was Walter, then he could get a ticket to Los Angeles and a whole new life in the bargain. So just like that, Arthur became Walter, and the police, anxious to close the case with a happy ending, they didn't ask too many questions. So now that there was irrefutable proof that Christine had been right all along, she wasn't just a hysterical woman, she was set free. And what did the LAPD and specifically Captain J.J. Jones have to say for themselves? Not as much as you'd expect, which is not much. She filed a lawsuit against Captain Jones and was awarded $10,800 for her pain and suffering. She planned to use the money to finance the continued search for her real son, but the captain refused to pay her, and he never did. The only punishment he got was a 4-month suspension for forcing a strange boy into her life and sending her to a mental institution for complaining about it. As for Arthur Hutchins, he became a traveling carny selling concessions. From there, he ended up back in California working as a horse trainer and a jockey. He was only 38 when he died from a blood clot, leaving behind a wife, a daughter, and a truly bizarre story. But this story isn't over yet. At the same time Christine and the rest of the country were learning the truth about Arthur/Walter, another boy 50 miles north of Los Angeles was going through a hell of his own. His name was Sanford Clark. He'd moved from Canada 2 years earlier to live with his uncle and his grandmother in Wineville, California. Never heard of Wineville? That's because what I'm about to tell you was so horrifying. The town changed its name to Mira Loma just to avoid being associated with this story. Oh, here's what happened. 19-year-old Gordon Stewart Northcott and his mother Sarah Louise offered to take Sanford back to Wineville with them so he could help out on the little farm they had there. They raised chickens and made a living selling eggs and hens. Now, Sanford was only 15, but at the time it wasn't unusual for a teenage boy to leave home for the chance to work and send some money back to his family. And that's just what Sanford did. But his letters home started to get a little weird. Nothing specific, but his sister Jessie had a feeling that something was wrong. She traveled all the way to Wineville to see for herself what was going on, and as soon as she got there, she knew she was right to worry. Gordon was aggressive and moody. It was obvious he was trying to keep her from being alone with Sanford, even to the point of threatening her, but she refused to leave until she got the truth from her brother. And one night, while Gordon and Sarah Louise were sleeping, Sanford told her about the things he'd seen on the farm. Well, Gordon was physically and sexually abusing Sanford and other boys. He lured some of them through help wanted ads he placed in newspapers asking for farm hands. Others he just snatched off the street and kept locked up in the chicken coops. Not only would he rape these boys, but he claimed he also rented or sold them to rich pedophiles. When the boys got to be too much to handle, or when he tired of them, Gordon used his .22 or an axe to end their lives. Quicklime decomposed their bodies faster, and their bones were buried in various places on the farm or burned in the desert. The very next day, Jessie traveled home and repeated to her mother what Sanford had told her.
I went to the Hollywood.
Her mother called the U.S. Embassy in Canada, and they alerted the law in Wineville. Now, as the story goes, when Gordon saw the police approaching the farm, he ordered Sanford to do whatever it took to stall them. By this time, Sanford knew his uncle was someone to be afraid of, so he tried his best to keep the police away, giving his uncle and grandmother time to get away. But left on his own, Sanford spilled the whole sordid story, including the fact that one of the boys murdered in the chicken coop was 9-year-old Walter Collins. He said Walter had been there, locked in the chicken coops, tortured and abused for about a week before he was killed. Small pieces of his body and the clothes he was wearing when he disappeared were eventually found in the chicken coop. Nilsson and Lewis Winslow had also fallen victim to Gordon and his mother Sarah Louise. Remnants of their library books and clothes were found in the chicken coops. Detectives even found a note written on the same paper as the letter sent to their parents, but this letter was only a few words. It said, "Don't worry, we are fine." Later, Sanford admitted that Gordon had forced him to help him murder one of the Winslow boys. As for Alvin Gothea, the headless boy in the burlap sack, Sanford said Gordon shot him, dumped the body, then brought his head back to the farm and smashed it into little pieces to bury. In total shock, hardly daring to believe what they were hearing was true, the police searched the farm with Sanford acting as their guide,
When it's
pointing out the grave
happening, they're
sites on the
telling you
ranch.
when it's happening.
But
You
what the
don't
boy
even
didn't
know,
know was that Sarah
when
and
it's
Gordon
actually
had
happening, you
already
feel like
excavated
it's
many of
a
the bodies and
movie.
taken the remains into the desert to burn them. Now, much later, partial remains would be found of still more victims in the desert outside of town. But as police dug under the chicken coops, they found enough gruesome evidence to convince them that Gordon and his mother were serial killers of children. The earth they dug up was soaked with blood. The remains of small human fingers and ankle bones were everywhere. They even found what was left of a bloody mattress and an axe covered with a combination of chicken blood and human. Gordon and Sarah Louise managed to escape across the border to Canada before they were captured in British Columbia. Now, reports say they were smug and cocky, thinking the extradition process back to California would take years and they were better off in Canada.
Yeah.
Gordon even sold his story to a Canadian newspaper, saying that the rumors of the chicken coop murders were exaggerated and he'd only fled to Canada for the sake of his poor little mother, Sarah Louise. So, she wouldn't have to deal with the harsh spotlight of the lying media in California. And he might have been right about the formal extradition process, but he never had the chance to find out, because the American lawman on his case just up and hauled him onto a train bound for California, and that was it. In December 1928, Gordon confessed to killing the Winslow brothers and Alvin Gothea. His nephew Sanford claimed there were many more, and Gordon himself hinted that there might be as many as 20 victims. He also reportedly gave the names of some of the rich, well-known clients that came to him for boys. But those names, if he really shared them, those were never published. The one murder he would not admit to was that of Walter Collins, not even when Christine herself came to visit him in prison and begged him to tell her if he'd taken her son. However, his mother, Sarah Louise, did confess to Walter's murder, along with the murders of the other three, although she later changed her story. She was convicted for Walter's murder. She also had something else shocking to admit about her son, Gordon. She told the jury he was the product of incest between her husband and her daughter, Winifred, Sanford's mother. Now, whether it was true or not, there's no way of knowing, but whatever her reasons, it didn't work. October 2nd, 1930 was Gordon's last day on Earth. It's been said that when he woke up that morning, he screamed and cried in fear of the news that was waiting for him that afternoon. He even asked if it would hurt. How ironic, coming from a man who raped and murdered little boys with an axe. He had to be dragged up the 13 steps to the gallows, and when he got to the platform, he collapsed. The noose was fitted around his neck, and he was rolled through the trap door where he strangled to death. His final words in this life were, "A prayer, please say a prayer for me." As for his mother, she was paroled in May 1940. She moved to Maryland, where she died 4 years later from heart disease. In 1930, the same year Gordon was executed, the citizens of Wineville voted to change the name of the town to Mira Loma, as it still is today. And as of 2009, the Northcott House still stands, although the chicken coops were torn down. As for Christine Collins, until the day she died at the age of 75 on December 8th, 1964, she never gave up hope that Gordon Northcott had been telling the truth, and her son Walter was not a victim of the chicken coop murders, since police were never able to find his entire body. She lived alone in the same neighborhood under different aliases to escape media attention for the rest of her life, always hoping that her son would find his way back to her. And that is your very sad recap. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. If you like getting all the crime in half the time, we appreciate it so much.
Sheesh. Discussing what people will do and hide and what family members will do. It's just, come on. Why? Why for? There's no reason. My offsprings